Welcome to the Living Well podcast, hosted by Terry Megley, CEO of City Union Mission. In each episode, we bring you inspiring stories of transformation and insights from those who've overcome life's challenges. Join us on this journey of resilience and discovery. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Living Well podcast. I'm Terry Megley. I'm the host, and I am excited to introduce to you one of our first guests on our show, Sheryl Hasmanis. And we're going to have a chance to get to know Sheryl as we're launching this first series of single moms and second chances. So Sheryl, welcome to our first episode of the Living Well podcast.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm excited for those that are watching this and listening as well to hear your incredible, inspiring story of the journey you've made. And so I'd like to take some time and kind of talk about that, your journey from, a single person to becoming married and then going through some hardships and becoming a single mom and some of those challenges, but also the rewards that God has done in your life. So you ready to take this journey?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm willing.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about you. And, we know that you are somebody that came through the mission and come through our programs, but let's take a few minutes and just kind of tell those that are with us today, what was your childhood like? What was that like growing up for you?
Well, I had a lot of challenges as a child. I grew up in a family with ADHD, pretty much a major component in our lives. But I was different than all the rest of my family. The rest of my family had a lot of energy, and I didn't. So it was always a challenge for anybody to kind of get that, and nobody knew what that was then. So we had, my father and mother were both overachievers. My brother ended up being the same way, and it was really hard for me to even move because of the ADHD and the paralysis that I kind of had. So my father was strict, and we had some troubles, and there was a lot of conflict because I wasn't, he did it in love, because it's like, we always want our kids to do well, but it was not a good environment, and you never know why things are the combination that they are, but it was difficult.
And it must have been confusing and hard for you through those early years. You mentioned some challenges. Can you kind of unpack that for us? What were some of those challenges, and when did you realize that maybe something was different about you?
Well, when I would be asked to do something, my intention was always, I always really wanted to. So that was always why it was, I wanted to do good in school. I wanted to finish my homework. I wanted to do these things, but because of the ADHD, it was more of like a paralysis to get some things done. And hard to explain how that worked, but it was difficult at my grades. All the report cards are, she's intelligent, but she doesn't focus, she doesn't get her work done, she daydreams, and she talks too much, and she's not and so then I would get in trouble because I did all of these things I wasn't supposed to. And I would be really hard on my own self too. This was the start of that shame kind of thing building up. Wanting to, I didn't want to make my parents upset. That was never my intention. And I didn't want to do anything to cause my teachers to get upset or any of that, or to be different than everybody else, that being in class and everybody's like, oh, not again, kind of a mode. I would get more and more in trouble, and the shame was layered and layered on. And it was to a point where that was the beginning of where I started to believe what I was like telling myself, where I was lazy. I was not able to, there were things that were broken in me. So it was hard. My dad was very strict. He was a disciplinarian. And that made it even worse because, that was what I was getting as feedback instead of love. So, there was lots of different things. So it started me on a path. So,
and that path, did it start to open up for you when you were in high school?
It started probably in middle school was where and this is too where my parents separated at that time too. So there was some reprieve from it because my dad wasn't in the house anymore and I wasn't in trouble every day. But now I was still not doing what I needed to do. I was getting bad grades, learning to lie, doing these kind of off path things that, you start to put yourself into an environment. You start to hang around the kids that do the same things. And it's not because of you just want to be around people that make you feel better. And you don't want to be around somebody that makes you feel worse. So, I was friends with everybody, but I started to be more and more into the group that was a little bit off and everybody would get in trouble. So I maybe would get in less trouble kind of things. And that carried into high school. Even though I kind of lived a dual life, I still did my sports and still did the things I needed to. I got 9 varsity letters, those kind of things. I did the things that kept me going. And I even was on student council, but then I still was going out to the tree that they called it and smoking, with nobody said anything back then too. So, I was on a path of not, the rebellion because I didn't know what to do because I was told I was broken and I was bad. So
that's tough. And I imagine with all those messages that you were internalizing, that at some level, smoking probably helped you.
It did, because it was something that I already figured I was broken and bad. and then I had a group of people that were accepting of me, and it was also a release of stress. So it was and there was that point of now there was some excitement in my life instead of just the negative attitudes. So those were the gate openers, the pieces. There was some just substance stuff going on too, but it wasn't big. It was just, the problem was that I could buy alcohol when I was 16. So I could go,
So there was another layer of coping
yeah.
of substance that came into your life.
It wasn't, I didn't use it as coping. I used it for acceptance. And then,
okay.
That piece of, I like to be around the crowd that was having a good time, because it was like, and being accepting, because happy things weren't around me very much. So the fact that I could actually buy alcohol at 16, it was that I would end up getting it for a lot of people, and the party would happen because I'd be there. Well, then that turns you into kind of the hero then. So it's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm not that and I'm this. So yeah, there was a lot of pieces to that.
So you were looking outside the family to fill a void of acceptance, love, belonging, and still fighting those internal messages that you actually believe that's how the world sees Sheryl, broken, dysfunctional, unable to finish. That's a hard life, Sheryl. And with all of those elements, something is baking inside of you that's getting ready to happen. And so talk to us about how you got into your marriage. How did that connection work for you?
So after high school, I did graduate from high school. I was like 9th from the bottom, but I did get my diploma because I was determined to do it. I didn't get good grades, so. But I moved to Arizona. My parents had already separated, and my dad went to Arizona. I was in Michigan, Grand Rapids, and he went to Phoenix. And when I was 16 and when I was 18, I asked if I could go there. And he offered me 1 month out of high school to go live with him and his new wife. And I was all about it, which is kind of weird, but Arizona had some appeal. I ended up going there and getting there. At first it was just I was working where he was working. Everything was fine. I was actually feeling that, my parents were successful, so I knew how to do some of that. I wasn't stupid, so I was working. But the problem there was I was working for his boss, and I was using the money I was making to pay for the car that was his boss's car. And my dad up and just decided to quit, and then they took the car and all the money that I had made during that time. Not a huge deal. I was still living with my father, so I wasn't like destitute. But at that point, I was bitter because I was working really hard and doing what I needed, and I was a kid and still had an attitude and had more of a rebellion state because of what I'd been doing in high school and that. I ended up getting a hold of my best friend in Michigan, and she wanted to come to Phoenix. So I flew back there to see my mom, and we drove across the country back, and she moved in with us, and it caused a lot of problems because she was a really pretty girl, and my stepmom didn't like her. So we had to immediately find a place to be. We ended up moving to the campus where the ASU is, and that started because we weren't going to college, but we were living there in the crowd. We got into some bad things.
Share about how you entered into marriage. And
oh yeah, sorry. That's my ADHD.
What were you hoping or expecting that this individual would fulfill in your life?
When I met my I was trying to say too that I became a bartender. So, imagine the person who was buying the alcohol turns into somebody that now is serving the alcohol. It made me feel like I was part of the party. I didn't have to always be part of it to be, but I was working in a bar, and my ex-husband came in and got in a fight, and we had to kick him out. And that's how I met my ex-husband, which is
well, that's a unique way of making a connection.
Which is like, who would do that?
A
right?
disruptive individual. I like that guy.
Well, he was actually doing it because somebody was picking on his friend. So he was to me that hero or something. That kind of weird.
So somebody rescuing somebody vulnerable
yes.
that couldn't help them, that seemed to kind of trigger the schema that you felt that you were living life, that you were less than, you needed someone to rescue you. But as your story is incredible, you went through a rocky marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And
He, when I met him, I thought he was nothing like my father, and I thought this was so different because, my dad was a business suit, always to the nines type. My husband was a construction worker and always had flannel and boots, and I thought they were just different people, but, there was the same kind of qualities of narcissism and things that, I don't want to classify anybody as being something, but it was difficult because I was still trying to fit a mold, and then there was an expectation, and I couldn't meet it because I didn't have the tools to do it. So we ended up having kids right away, and 3 of them right away. I mean, it was just like, oh wow, we are, yeah.
And that's how family usually starts.
Yeah, and it was 3 kids in 4 years, so it was fast, and then I felt like, then I got panicked. That was when the start of the fear, because I didn't know what to do at that point. I was far away from family and things like that at that point. He was my only source of being able to help me and my kids, and there was that fear or the threat. I'm not going to go too deep on that, but that if anything were to happen, I wouldn't see a dime and there'd be no help.
Right.
So then there was that entrapment piece where I can't do anything. I've got these kids, and my kids were the most important thing to me in the world. So I had quit smoking, drinking, all of that because my kids and their health and all of those things, because they were everything. So,
and at some point in your story, something of a betrayal took place. Mm-hmm. Can you just share briefly about that betrayal?
There were numbers of them, though, but we'd been together for a while. We had moved a lot because he was in construction, and it was that constant move. It was always, we had to pack everything we owned to pull the kids out of school, move to another place, sometimes other states. We ended up going to Ohio. I told him that I would even move to Ohio if he would stop moving us, if he would stop moving our kids around. That was where he was from. I was from Michigan. I said, I'll even go there if you stop moving me and the kids around. These kids need a future and a base. we were just, just south of where my mom was that could have supported me. But he kind of just left me there in Ohio and went to Boston where he had a job that time. And we had it was a lot. Anyway, there was those constant, we ended up still moving. We ended up moving here to Missouri. And this is where we stopped, because he stopped working on the road and he got a job local and stayed here. But then we were together way too much, and it caused some conflicts. During 9/11, I was in a mental facility because we had some money problems and he blamed me, but I didn't spend it. It was like the money problems were there. My parents were actually helping to get us out of that, but he couldn't see that he was just letting me take the blame for those things. It was like, he was working. I should have a lot of money, but he wasn't paying attention. And he would give me $100 to feed my family all week while he was because he was never home. He was always somewhere else. And I was trying to maintain the household, animals, kids, with $100 for a week for everything. So, and we lived in the country, so getting around and gas was there's a lot to this. But then it broke down. It broke bad. And I just felt like at that time I said, I really don't want to be here. I'm obviously causing everybody too much. It would be better if I wasn't here. My kids would be happy. My husband would be happy. My parents would be happy. And I know that's not the truth now, but when you feel that you're causing a burden, not like I wasn't trying to be selfish. I wasn't trying to take away, but I felt like I was such a burden that I wouldn't be good for my kids, that I wouldn't, do those things.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute there. You're expressing some emotions, and you're feeling some things. Tell me what you're feeling right now.
Well, I'm sad that, you never want to, life is precious, and I don't ever want anybody to ever feel that way. So the fact that I did, I had given thought to, because we were right by the Ohio River, and this is really hard because if my kids hear it too, but I remember going to the river and thinking, I'm just gonna make it easy and just jump, putting that out in verbiage too. So I was going down to there, and I passed a street called Fish Guts, which is really stupid, and it shouldn't have been an issue. But my daughter had called a pair of her shoes her fishing gut shoes because she had been with her dad when he was cleaning fish one time. And he goes, I'm going to wear my fish gut shoes. And when I saw Fish Gut Road, I went, for my babies.
You felt like that the Lord was intervening in that moment to stop you from following through on some harmful action.
It changed my whole thought process. It stopped me in my tracks and went, my baby girl, my kids, I can't, they need me. So, God put me here for those reasons. And even though I felt like it would be better for them, and I had talked myself in the own playing track in my mind that would be a better thing for my kids to finally hear that they, I'm the only one that's here and doing this for them. Who else is going to do this for them? So I ended up checking myself into the mental health facility. The next morning is when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And then it got really bad. When I finally, after the 3 days, I needed to get out of there because I wanted to go be with my kids.
Right.
My ex-husband drove us to the bank, and he left me in the parking lot right after getting out of this. And he goes, I got to take your name off the bank accounts and things like that. And
so it seems to me that even though you saw a sign that caused you to pause and evaluate the deep love you have for your children, and then you made some healthy choices that you needed to take care of yourself and that you needed to become a healthier mom And so you sought out mental health assistance.
Right.
And that was an excellent choice for you. But then there were these consequences, as you were describing,
Right.
of your husband beginning to back out and not trust you. I think might be good for us is just to kind of come back to the moment now where you're at. And how do you make meaning now of your struggle of mental health when you look back now? Because you're healthy and you've recovered and you've gone through our programs, but when you have a new filter, a new way of seeing life through the lens of God's love,
I love that.
how do you take that lens now for you, Sheryl, and look back at, the struggles of being ADHD, being different, wanting to belong, looking for opportunities to be accepted, and then in a failed marriage? How do you make sense now of all of that from the lens of God's love?
One of the first scriptures that was considered all love, consider it all joy, because that was it. I think about what I went through during that time, and it has given me an opportunity to connect with people in such a deep way, because I can see hurt, I can see pain, I can see struggles, and I know that every story is different. That is what I needed and wanted during all the stuff I struggled through. Is like, I want just to be okay and connect with people, and I wasn't. So now my own pain was the thing that was giving me an opportunity, because I could see those pains in other people, and that was the considered all joy. And then also where it says that was in I comfort you through these things so that you can comfort others. Those were the two scriptures that he gave me right from the get-go. And yeah.
So you're referring to 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 4 and 5,
Yes.
about the comfort of God and through Christ that
Right.
we're able to comfort others. Sounds like you are experiencing some joy that you're now able to take that pain and those experiences, and you're able to see where people are at, and you're now able to connect to others when you were wanting desperately others to connect with you.
Right.
Right? And so now you're seeing the pain when you come across people to start ready to tell their story.
Right.
And you
It's
sense
such
that.
a beautiful thing.
That's interesting you say it's a beautiful thing.
It is a
Why
beautiful
is it
thing.
so beautiful that you see other people's pain?
Because when somebody can open up their pain, it's like that burden isn't just theirs anymore. And that's why we give it to God, but it has to start somewhere. And sometimes when you don't have a relationship with God, to have somebody else just be able to be the first voice, that you can give your voice to that. That's what City Union Mission did for me too. I have said it, that I got there and they loved on me. It was the first time people were looking at me different and talking to me. I've been in church, I've gone through counseling, I've done all of it, but I didn't have that relationship yet or that connection. So I really consider it joy, and joy is different than being giddy or happy. It's that deep love connection, not the superficial stuff that doesn't do anything for you. And that's all I was finding in the world. So,
Right. And, there may be some of our listeners and those watching that are where you were, that they're looking for that void and they're searching for it, for acceptance and understanding and love. What advice would you have for a single mom or a woman that may be in a similar situation like you? What would you say how would you speak that to them? Just say it. What would you say to them?
You're not alone. You're not alone. There's more than just what you see. I mean, if I based my life on what I could see and feel, then I would have nothing. I mean, you're not alone. And we can separate ourselves in our own heads so far away from other people, especially now after 2020 and things like that. There's so many hurt, broken people who don't feel connected. But there are people, there's the church, there's the, don't forsake the gathering, but the connection first starts with God. And that's where I had to learn a new, even though I was a Christian and really a believer, deep believer, I had to start listening to what he was telling me to do. Like, speak truth into your world. I had been lying my whole life as a protection. I had lied to everybody. I got so good at lying that I could deceive anybody with my lies, because it was my protection. It was the only thing that protected me from the wrath of my dad and from being in trouble and not doing the things I needed to get done. And I was so good at it.
So what would you say to a single mom that is lying to themselves, thinking that's actually helping them?
Yeah.
What's one other thing you can say to that?
The truth will set you free, but that sounds like really cliche, but it really did. When I spoke truth into my world, everything lifted. There was the burden, the package, the baggage that I was carrying for so long. All of a sudden, it wasn't my burden, and it was so good. It was so freeing. There's more to do with that, but that's the step to go. Yeah.
So drawing close to God's word and allowing his light to shine the truth on reality. I think that's what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what our listeners need to hear.
I think it's really important too. I was hearing things and going through a lot of people talking to me, and I was listening about God and had been for a while. But this is when I really started, and I opened up my Bible. I read it myself. I started reading, in the New Testament, and started going through and just sitting down and reading. And then all the things that I was hearing started to make sense because they were being reflected in what I was reading too. So it's not just about going and talking to people. It's about you doing some of it too, and that was, I wouldn't have got the understanding I have if I hadn't read it myself. I don't care who or because it's a version of what somebody else is talking about, and we have a whole world now that doesn't want to have anybody tell them anything. Well, just read. Just read and see. You make your own opinion. Just read. That's
right. I like that. Sheryl, you have been a wonderful guest, and we're so proud of your courage to share half of your story, really, because there's a lot more there. But I love
so many stories,
the message that you're having to single moms and women. And for you, we want you to be able to walk away knowing that God's truth shines a light on your reality. And I love what Sheryl said. You're not alone. There are people around you that care about you, love you, and look for the ways that God brings these small signs into your life that lets you know that he loves you and there's people that care about you. So thank you for joining in us with the Living Well podcast. I hope that this drop of goodness that has showed up today, the name of Sheryl, has been a blessing to you. And I know you have been a blessing to me as well. Thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Living Well. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media for even more inspiration. Want to join our mission? Visit cityunionmission.org. Stay inspired, and we'll catch you next time.